I'm a fifth, or I always say, trying my best to be a fifth generation tobacco grower, third generation cigar manufacturer. A little bit of background before La Galera even existed, before my father, grandfather existed. My great-great-grandfather immigrated after the Cuban War, in the late 1800s to Dominican Republic. And he had a warehouse at the foot of the North Mountains in a town called Guasumal. And it was a very strategic position because the mountains was full of coffee. The east part of the valley, you had a lot of cocoa beans. The west part of the valley, you had a lot of tobacco. So my great-grandfather buys some land and continues processing, but only tobacco. So he would buy tobacco from grow it himself and process it. Then my grandfather opened a factory in the late 1920s. The official registry is actually 1936. That's why you'll see in the box is 1936. And he opened up the factory to supply the local markets. Back then, cigarettes weren't really a thing. So it was more the cheroot style cigars, really Dominican, only binder and filler. Then that market started going down with the introduction of cigarettes, of course, and also we had a thing happen where we had a dictator from 1930 1961, Trujillo, and he incented the moving from the rural parts to the urban areas. And at that point in the Dominican Republic, if you were seen smoking a cigar, it was a poor man's smoke. Cigarettes was the new trend. Was the machine-made thing. Before everything was handmade. There was no appreciation in handmade products. You know, if everything's handmade, it's not special, right? So after the Industrial Revolution, machines were cool. Cigarettes got introduced. Also a little bit of the easier smoke. So that market started going down. And then in the 80s, my father, along with my grandfather, decided to open a free zone, which we could import the wrappers, which is the only leaf that we do import. The rest of the tobacco is coming from one of our farms, one of our 5 farms. And yeah, little by little, in the 90s, there was a cigar boom. Obviously, the internet and magazines became a thing, and pictures of cigars were getting around. It was just a crazy moment in the cigar industry. And during that time, we consolidated ourselves as manufacturers. We were making we're still making a lot of other brands. For example, Takamaka makes Vinegar. We're part owner of the Aging Room, Matilde. We've made Trinidad Santiago in the past. So we were always behind the scenes as a manufacturer. And then in 2016, we acquired Indian Head Cigars, which is a distribution company in the US. And we felt we had all the tools necessary for us to make a cigar, price it and place it as we want it. And the reason we named it La Galera actually means the room where cigars are rolled. It's basically the production area. Almost 100 years making cigars, planting tobacco. All of the tobacco that we use in all of our cigars, except for the wrappers, are from our farm, from seed to store. We even opened a logistics company last year, so at this point, only packing material we're outsourcing. And in 9 years, we're in, as of last week, 113 countries. So the brand has been picking up very well. We still have a long way to go, but the acceptance has been there, which is what I enjoy the most. And now to pair with the drinks with Nathan, I haven't had the rum yet, but what I really like about cigars and rum, before even having it, is that not only they're from the same regions, the Caribbean, a lot of rum. I'm not sure where this one is from, but
Seychelles.
Seychelles. So it's not Caribbean, but it's the tropics. So tobacco could grow in theory in Seychelles, but point is, I think they pair very well because tobacco is naturally bitter. Rum obviously is made from sugar, so it's naturally sweet. So what I think happens when you have a sip of rum and then a draw of your cigar, it augmentates those flavors, that bitterness, and vice versa. Once you have a puff of the cigar and you have some rum, because the cigar is a little bit bitter, it just augmentates that sweetness, the natural sweetness of the rum. So again, I think I respect people like their whiskey and thing, but me being Dominican, of course, I'm a rum fan, and I do think it goes really well. And especially in the Maduro. Today we're smoking the Gaviarro. So a fun fact about the Gaviarro, we only make 1,000 boxes. The reason is because the Gaviarro way of making is not the traditional modern way of making cigar. So there's no molds involved. So the same that does the bunch also wraps. So that's why it has a little bit of a tummy in the middle. Because in order for you, without having the mold to be able to crunch it, you have to do the bunch a little bit thick in the middle, and then you roll it. So it's not all rollers can do it, only a few rollers can, and obviously the efficiency is much lower because regular cigars, now they work in pair. One does the bunch, the other does the wrapper, so it's just easier for them to concentrate, do one thing at a time. And the San Andrés wrapper has a characteristic that it's the only fire-cured wrapper in our line. So you do get some of that smokiness. And then the binder is some Piloto Cubano. Piloto Cubano is very strong tobacco, but once you age it out, it gets very sweet. So it blends very well that smokiness of the wrapper, the sweetness of the Piloto, and then you have some Criollo, different Criollo origins. We do blends with the same seed, just from different parts of the island, because you do have different microclimates. For those that have been in the Dominican Republic, if you go to the western part of the valley, it's very dry, lots of hours of sunlight. Even the water source you're getting from is from the central mountain range, which is very neutral water. On the other hand, if you go further east in the valley, in the area of San Victor, you're getting water from the north mountain range, and that is very hard water. It's very high in the mineral content, especially calcium. That's why they're turquoise blue. And those little things, the soil is much more, it's black, it's muddy, it's constantly clouded, so you get less, the clouds filter UV rays, so the plants get less hours of sunlight. And we blend those, and it results in the Gaviarro again, one of my favorite smokes. The smokiness of the San Andrés, the sweetness of the Piloto, and the spiciness of the Criollo, mixed with also the Maduro wrapper. San Andrés has some acidity. It just blends perfectly well. And once you take a sip of the rum, I'm sure it's gonna blend better.
We're in a different part of the world to historic rum production, or historic rum production as we would know it. So rum production kind of started on the Caribbean, post the Brits and the Royal Navy and the blend and all of that. But rum and sugarcane actually originates probably closer to India, in the Indian Ocean, as sugarcane as a grass actually grew first in Papua New Guinea. So Takamaka is a rum from the Seychelles. Now it doesn't have 5, 6, 7, 800 years of history. It's a little bit younger than that, 25 years old. But what that means is that we don't have a lot of the baggage that sometimes tradition brings. There's not that many rules, not that many regulations, that allows us to then play a little bit, be a bit more creative with it all. Now the first rum that I've just given everyone, it's a little different to what we would normally associate with a cigar pairing rum. Normally we'd be looking at your Diplomaticos, maybe your Havana 3s, maybe your slightly older rums, because we're looking for that barrel chemistry and a lot of that barrel age to come in and complement the flavors from the cigar, right? Normally when we think of an aged rum, we're thinking tobacco, vanilla, chocolate, maybe getting a little bit of this kind of vanilla and sort of cocoa bean, all of those notes in there as well. But what we decided to do with this one was go with a very, very interesting unaged rum. Now some people would call this a white rum. Milk is white. This is clear. So clear means this hasn't been in a barrel, and it is the natural product straight off the still of pure sugarcane juice. So unlike a lot of rums, which may be made from molasses, which is the byproduct of sugar production, to get sugar, historically we'd take the sugarcane, you juice it, you boil it down, and you crystallize it, and what was left at the end was this black treacle substance that we figured out you could ferment into alcohol. What a glorious day that was. So all of the stuff that we thought we would just throw away, we decided to ferment, distill. I'm not saying it was good back then, right? Like, rum has come a long way. But also rum, because it was that byproduct, it's one of the only spirits, if not the only spirit, that has never ever been used as a medicine. If we think about whiskies, we think about gins, we think about aquavites, the water of life, there was always this prescription of this is good for you. With rum, it's like, no, this is just gonna do good things to you. It's not necessarily good for you. So, has anyone tasted sort of French Caribbean style spirits, like rum agricoles and things like that?
Yeah.
Amazing, right? Absolutely stunning. Very different to what we normally see from Cuban style rums or Haitian style rums and things like that. So this is more on that French agricole side, and that's because we're using that pure sugarcane juice. Now, if you go to the Caribbean, sugarcane is everywhere. If you go to southern parts of India, you'll find sugarcane as well. And if you go to sometimes Royal Market in London, you'll get some fresh sugarcane. Fresh being the optimal word here. Now, if you chew on that, you'll extract the juice and it's beautifully sweet. Absolutely delicious, but very vegetal, very grassy. Sugarcane is a grass, after all. So what we're looking for then, instead of turning that beautiful natural flavor of that grass into sugar and into molasses, and then having that sort of rich, funky flavor coming through in the rum. What we're trying to do is distill the essence of the sugarcane. So on the nose, you might be finding notes of, say, like almost green olive, green pepper. You might find really herbaceous, very grassy notes. And that's purely the only thing that you get based on the fact that it's from the pure sugarcane juice. Now, the guys that started Takamaka 25 years ago, like I said, they don't have a huge amount of history of rum production in the Seychelles. It literally started with these guys. If we go to Jamaica, if we go to Guyana, if you go to Barbados, you now have all of these rules and regulations, what you can do, what you can't do, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, everywhere, right? And that's super important for protecting an AOC. The French love doing it. They'll put it on their cheeses, they'll put it on the ciders, they'll put it on their wines. There's not much the French won't put an AOC on, to be completely fair. Whereas what that does, it tends to bind you to a certain style. So what Takamaka was able to do was say, well, we don't have a history of rum production in the Seychelles. There's not cane that grows naturally in the Seychelles either. It's a granitic island, it's not volcanic, so cane actually had to be transplanted there and grown there. They thought, well, it's got the climate for it, so why would we not try it? Like you said, tobacco probably would grow there. It's in the tropics.
Yep.
I'm not saying it would be as maybe intense as what you find in Dominica or Dominican Republic or Haiti or somewhere like that. But what you do get is a slightly different flavor profile that's unique to that place. So the guys, the Doffe family, they were educated in South Africa, and their one goal in life was to move back to the Seychelles and make a job for themselves, which meant they could surf every day. Rum distilling was that job. So it doesn't take a huge amount of money to set up a rum distillery. It takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of trial and error, it takes a lot of mistakes. And this is kind of the culmination of all of those mistakes, learning from those mistakes and putting it in a bottle. So this is the Takamaka Le Clos. It's a very limited release rum. It is 100% pot distilled, pure cane juice, and it's coming off the still at 53.4%. So a little punchier, but that brightness and that freshness should pair really well with the start of the cigar. And later on we'll taste an older aged rum, which will pair really well with the second half or final third of the cigar as well. So hope you enjoy it. I'm here for any questions, obviously, but back over to Jose and the cigar.
As he was saying, rum has a lot of AOC things. In the Dominican Republic, for example, for it to be called rum, it has to be, first of all, 100% Dominican sugarcane. Also, it has to be 100% from sugarcane alcohol. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Pugal Leyenda. If you ever see a bottle of those, you can see it. Nowhere on the bottle it says the word rum. It's a sugarcane liquor, and that's because they have they use wines. So by Dominican law, it cannot be called rum. But going back to cigars, because I'm more of a fan of rum. I work in cigars, but yeah, the pairing goes very well. I think the chocolatey, again, I haven't tried those.
Just over there for you.
I know the clear rum that he said is going to be a little bit more, I don't want to say aggressive, but a little bit more pungent. Because obviously it hasn't taken the coloration of the barrels, because it's very young. Dominican standards, for it to be called white rum, which is what we call it, it has to be younger than 3 years. If it's over, then it cannot be considered white rum anymore. It's interesting to pair white rum. Usually we mix it for the mojitos or things like this, but yeah. Taste it. It's the sugarcane juice, you said, right?
Exactly.
So it's like rum agricole, yeah.
Exactly. Herbaceous, green, grassy, a bit more freshness to it. If we were to do something like a Havana 3 or even a Takamaka Blanc, which is a molasses-based rum, you tend to get more of the white chocolate, more of the nutty notes, but also a slight bitterness because it's molasses-based. You can ferment molasses as much as you want, but you're not going to get huge amounts of sweetness from it. It's already given up a lot of its sugar. It has residual sugars there in it, but it's not going to give you the same grassiness and freshness that sugarcane juice will give you. Same as if you sweeten something, you're going to need to use a lot more treacle than you would natural sugar.
Yeah.
Right? That's the difference. So the sweetness and the sugar levels in the sugar compared to the residual sugar left in the treacle, it's going to be very, very different.
I don't know if you guys have any comments about the cigar, any comments with the pairing, or any questions. There's no such thing as bad questions, I always say. So any question, anything tobacco related or cigar related, you're more than welcome to. If not,
You may have touched on it, but what was the reasoning behind that shape?
the shape,
Yeah, the fact.
because again, cigars nowadays, you go basically the production, they work in pairs. There's the buncher, there's the roller. So the buncher, he has what we call a lever man machine. So it's kind of like a piece of cloth, and you graduate it to depending on the girth of the cigar. So you put in the binder, you put in the fillers, and you make the cylinder tube, which it starts to be the cigar. Then you place it in a mold where you press it for about an hour, and it maintains the shape of it. But back then, before it had molds or the presses, people were just like the shoots. They would just roll them by hand. So instead of going to a buncher and then a roller, it's the same person that does both the bunching and rolling. And once the bunch is done, because it's not pressed, it would unravel. So they would have to hold it in their hand and then apply the wrapper right there. So that's why you're gonna see they're not all perfectly straight. You know, there's gonna have some veins in some parts, maybe a little bit of a girth variation. We do test in the quality control that they don't have, but the standard should be 48 ring gauge at the middle. The head and the foot, again, they vary a little bit because it's a completely handmade product. And it was just, again, an homage. It's an art that is nowadays the newer rollers don't really do. They only learn the new way. And we still have some guys that are from the old school part of the industry that they know how to make it. It's art. In the end, we want to show it to the world and appreciate it. And I wish I could do more cigars like that, but it's only 2 people that know how to make it. And again, it's a 15 count box. To get those amounts of cigars, it just takes a lot of time. And also give it time to age and process and everything. So it's not necessarily that it's going to change the smoke. I mean, we have the same blend in regular sizes, but the thing about the size is it starts out narrow and it really concentrates, and then all those oil, when it opens up in the middle, kind of concentrate there. I feel it's not so much as of a exponential smoke. I'm sorry, not so much of a linear smoke like in regular cigars. It's more exponential because it opens up midway, gives it space for those oils, and then narrows back down again. It really gets kind of intense over the last because it has more airflow, it has more space in the middle for those oils. And it's just a neat shape to smoke. And again, the San Andrés wrapper, it being the only fire cured, it really has that taste that pairs well. I think also with the rum, the fact that it's a little bit bittery, smoky, and then you have a grassy, greeny, white rum. So yeah, the size is not necessarily because of one specific reason. It's a way to make a cigar. Same as Perfectos, you know, you have the Hemingways. There you have the advantage, once you light it up, you get very strong flavor of the wrapper because you're basically smoking the wrapper for the first couple of puffs in Hemingways. But after that, yeah, it's kind of wider and starts narrowing down, which helps with the oils. But sizes won't make a blend. You know, if it's a good blend, obviously you have a preferred sizes, and obviously they do vary a little bit because the more girth there's a cigar, the more tobacco you can fit in. And obviously the ratio to wrapper binder is much less in a fat cigar than a skinny. But you should get the premise on any size. And we just saw, again, for the San Andrés, the taste and the amount of oils, that's why it's such a dark wrapper. The size really helps it because it gives the space. You won't get the problem with clogging, let's say, because it's, let's say, like a pyramid, which is just completely narrowing down. So yeah, the fact that it's a dark wrapper, I think in the Gaviarro, a very oily wrapper, helps. Maybe if you were to do this in Connecticut, you wouldn't feel as much difference because Connecticut doesn't have as many oils. So the space wouldn't be used, let's say. If anything, it can overheat the cigar because constant drawing, obviously, smoke is hot once you receive it in your mouth. Makes it taste spicy, but a lot of times it's just overheated, the people that overheat the cigars. So Gaviarro is the name we gave it. Usually this way of making cigars is called gavilla. So we do it a lot, for example, when we're blending. So whenever we go to our raw material warehouse and we're blending, before you put the tobaccos together, you have to try them independently to see the profile, even the conduction of the tobacco. So obviously I'm not gonna sit there and roll a single cigar, like one cigar for each of the tobaccos. It's just on the fly, you know, you open up the bale, you take out some leaves, you cut it to make it the filler, then you wrap it to make the binder. And that's how you try tobacco. And then we did, again, going back to what I was saying, we figured we could do this because I'm used to it because I was born into it, I was raised in it, but not that I forgot, but we forgot back home that not everywhere in the world cigars are as common or so many people can be so hands-on like we are. And it's just those small little things that we think if we show the people they're a little bit more. So it's just the old school way. It's the way of making cheroots, and we made it into how to make a cigar. Because cheroots is the same, but just binder filler. In this case, we did add a wrapper. But it's just the authentic way. How the Tainos used to smoke when they would do cylinder tube, because not they would use the Criollo, which was like a big pipe type of situation. But yeah, this is the original way that cigars were made when they started. Sorry? No, they're not capped because in the end you don't finish. You wouldn't be able to cap it because when you cap it, you kind of do a cut, but the cigar is already laying on the table and you are able to do a cut. At this point, you have to grab it in the hand and with the wrapper, roll it there, and you just have to cut it there. And we have it's not a mold, it's kind of like a box thing where they start aging, and once that wrapper's humidity goes away, because you do have to humidify after all the aging of the tobacco. To work the tobacco, you have to recondition it, and obviously that's why you have to age your cigars, not only tobacco, so to let that humidity dissipate. So we let in that box kind of dissipate, and once it's dry, it'll maintain its shape without an issue. So it's just the way that you do it. I could do a head, but then I would have to use a mold because the way of the manufacturing. So yeah, a lot of people simulate Toscanelo, especially again because it's a fire cured. It has somewhat of a fire cured taste, but in reality, Toscanelo is very much more smoked. This is only partial fire curing in the sense that they do have the open windows and they do the smoking, but it's not as concentrated as, let's say, the Toscanelo or the Kentucky fire curing. They close doors, active smoke, and it's like just like a meat smoker. There's a lot of smoke. In the Mexican San Andrés, you'll see the smoke, you'll be able to walk, but it's nothing like. So it gets some of the taste, but nothing like. It's much more subtle. Much more subtle. That's what it is.
How many cigars come out?
So we've actually been reducing the amount of cigars because again we were making private brands, but we have slowly but surely taken those out. At our peak, we made almost 9 million cigars. Now we're somewhere 6.8ish, around 7. But obviously we have more of our own brand. La Galera is somewhere around 4 million cigars now. So the rest are some private brands that we still do. But we're focusing on our brand again. We have all the tools necessary. We're about to expand. We just moved factory, doubled the operation, and then we have plans to continue having growing in the farm. We have a farm which we're not able to use to full capacity because we don't have water. There was a water reservoir when my father acquired the farm, but it doesn't hold the water very well. So we have a project after we just moved into the new factory. Once we're completely settled there, we're gonna prepare that land to. We're going to create 2 water reservoirs and fix the one that we have, and we're going to be able to plant the totality of the farm. I'm very excited for that because it's basically virgin land. So the first crop of that farm is going to be amazing. I'm looking forward to that. Definitely. But yeah.
Wait, second or third generation?
So my grandfather opened the factory. So again, I'm trying my best to be 3rd generation. And 5th generation growing tobacco. So again, our main business is still trading tobacco. We sell tobacco to other manufacturers. We export tobacco to Nicaragua, to some Nicaraguan manufacturers, because that's my family's base was there, and the cigars was more for the local market. So we were always supplying and exporting tobacco. The Dominican Republic in general was before much more of a tobacco exporter than a cigar manufacturer itself. But obviously we always had the culture, and the country's just grown. We're the only country that makes cigars and smokes cigars. So if you think about, Nicaragua, Honduras, Cuba, they make cigars, but they don't really have that middle class that can go to a cigar lounge and buy a cigar. So obviously having the culture, having the people, the country growing, cigars have become a thing, and it's growing. It's a second industry after tourism. It employs, I think, direct employment. A couple months ago I saw it was like 200,000 people. That's only direct. That doesn't count, it's all the entire supply chain. And remember, it's a very labor-intensive industry. 250 to 300 hands touch it. And then going back to our history, it even goes to our independence. You know, basically, when it came to our independence, it was like the locals, the mulattoes that had gotten mixed, and then you had the oligarchs from the Spanish crown, which had the big extensions of land for sugarcane, and then the locals, you know, had small land. Tobacco was always for quality, not quantity. So, you know, you had the kids in the barn climbing up to hang, the woman was down tying while the man was out in the farm. So it's much more democratic crop than sugarcane. Sugarcane was just massive extensions of land, couple ox, you know, in the trapiche, the thing to extract the sugarcane juice. So going back to history, even tobacco, it's part of the reason we were independent, part of the reason we are where we are as a country. Tourism has only really boomed in the last 30 years. Punta Cana didn't even exist until like 30 years ago, which is crazy, but yeah, it's in our culture, and yeah, tobacco was in my family before we were making cigars, so 5 generations growing tobacco, and 3rd. Hopefully, we'll continue fighting this tobacco battle nowadays, so that more generations are to come. I truly believe that there's space. Cigar smokers will always find a way and look for cigars. And I think eventually people are going to have to realize that cigarettes and cigars are 2 completely different industries. I always remind people the amount of units that we produce in a year as an industry, a handmade cigar, is equivalent to 18 hours in the cigarette industry. So that really puts things into perspective. You know, the amount of cigarettes and cigars being sold, and in the end, you know, the legislation is always, oh, the kids. I have yet to see a kid spending 20 pounds on a cigar. You know, they'd rather spend 20 pounds something else they got off the street. I don't see them often, you know, getting cigars. So for me, that's just a cheap excuse, and just the amount of people that live off of it. Remember, only Dominican Republic, 200,000 direct. You know, cigarette factories, you walk in and you maybe have like 2 engineers, you know, 4 guys for moving boxes, and that's it. So hopefully I'll continue battling. I grew up in this. I grew up in Tamboril, which is a town. Everybody respected my family. They're like family. They would, you know, take me into the house, feed me. I wish that my kids can have the same upbringing. And that's why we did La Galera in the end. You know, La Galera, we tried pricing it, you know, the margin that we take out of the middleman instead of putting in our pocket. We wanted to for you consumers and the stores and distributor have their piece of cake. There's enough pieces of cake for everybody. And again, us knowing that there's a big war against tobacco, we want to fight it by doing it. The best way to do that is getting cigars on people's hands, letting them know that they don't have to sell a kidney to get a nice box of cigars. And that's what La Galera is. It's an homage to the people and reminding that cigars are for everybody. You know, I've sat in a room with an essential worker, high executive in a bank, very successful entrepreneur, talking politics, sports, religion, respectfully. And I don't think that happens in any other place outside of a cigar smoking, because it's a gentleman's and a gentlewoman's business industry. Yeah, you got some infiltrated everywhere, but for the most part, you know, to this day, we bring in containers of tobacco, we rent out farms in Mexico, and we don't do contracts, we do handshakes. Not to this day, there has not been one contract for tobacco on our side, because it's a small industry, word gets around relatively quickly, and in Spanish we have a saying that your word is heavier than your signature. So it's a small industry, we're still able to do that, and hopefully it'll continue being that way. What's your favorite son or daughter, right? It depends. So I always gravitate. I usually smoke 2 cigars a day. I'm spoiled. I get to smoke everywhere, in my house, in my car, in my office. So the accountant's office, even though if they don't work, they work for a tobacco company. So I start out my day with a Habano. I just think it's our most complex, and it's more or less a medium. And after I smoke the Habano in the morning with my coffee, it kind of, because it's medium, I kind of know if I want something fuller or if I want something milder. I usually go for the milder after a nice hefty lunch, Dominican, you know, rice, beans, meat, salad, all the good stuff. You know, you get kind of groggy, so to get back into it, you know, a mild cigar with some coffee, black coffee. Usually do the Jade or the Connecticut. And yeah, if I'm going to third cigar, that means I'm probably going out, having some dinner. And there I like the Maduros, San Andrés, or the broadleaf. I also very much enjoy the broadleaf. It's a little bit of a stronger cigar, so you gotta have a nice meal before. It's a stronger cigar, a broadleaf, but it's just the sweetness you get from the Maduro in Spanish means ripe. So that's why a lot of times it's Maduro because it's dark, that's ultra ripe, but it's also sweet. But yeah, Habano or the African Cameroon, I think, are my favorite ones, just because of the fact that they're somewhere in between mild and full. So, you know, if I wanted a full cigar, if it's medium, you know, it's not gonna satiate me, but it's there, and vice versa. If I want a mild and I have a medium cigar, maybe it's a little bit too much, but it's not overpowering. So I like to sit in the middle. But there's no right or wrong. I mean, for example, I'm not that big of a Connecticut smoker, but my father loves Connecticut. I think his favorite would be the Connecticut and the Habano. It's just preference, right? There's no right or wrong. Some people like spicy food, others don't. That's just how cigars are. Even the size-wise, for example, I'm more of a Corona, at most Robusto. I don't do anything above 50 ring gauge. Possibly also because I have multiple cigars a day, so I want to switch it up. I don't want to commit to too thick of or too long of a cigar. And I also really like appreciating the wrapper's taste, because obviously the less girth of the cigar, you get more from that wrapper. For example, in the African Cameroon, I love a thin cigar like a Corona because you can really get that African Cameroon aroma. So yeah, I'd say African Cameroon on the Corona size, I can die with that. You can bury me with that cigar. I'll be happy.
Should we move on to the...
Where are you guys going? Back there with the fish.
It depends, right? Because it's a double-edged sword working with so many people sometimes. It's like a big family, right? You love each other, but there's moments where you hate each other. And that's more or less. I mean, we closed last December with 421 employees, with only in operation without the farms. So, you know, you're dealing with 421 different heads. And not everybody wakes up on the right side of the bed every day. You know, once it gets to Friday and, you know, they have their softball game out there, we're all nice and, you know, loving each other. But sometimes, you know, I just want to go to the farm and just stand around the tobacco and just hear the wind rustle in the barn or anything, and not deal with anybody, because we're dealing with so many people in the factory, and especially us having the complete vertical integration. It's not only the cigar manufacturing side, we have the raw material preparations. So again, I can't choose. They both have their pros and cons. It really depends on how I am and how they are, how the family situation is. Again, right now it's good because we raised salaries, so they can't fucking complain. You know, we're still the best paying in all of Tamboril. So, but I do enjoy in the end, even though sometimes I want to kill them being in the factory, because it's just, I grew up around, literally I grew up going to their houses, playing with their kids in my summers, trying to do cigars, trying to work in the packing department, trying to strip tobacco, and they're all like my uncles and aunts. You know, we have, I think the other day they did the average for the amount of time employees that we have, it's somewhere around like 9 years. Because people, once they start working in La Palma, they usually don't leave. We're right in the center of town. So for example, for breakfast, lunch, they can go home and be back. If they gotta run an errand, they can go and back. We're very open to our people, you know. Our doors are always open. They can walk into our office whenever. I mean, the guys from Brightleaf have seen it, you know. And people enjoy that, you know. For example, in our farm side, we give all of our people in the farm breakfast. We also have like plantains and cassava, turkeys, chickens, so that they can also eat from that. And we have another farm in the mountains, and once every 2 months we bring down a big boar and cook it for everyone in the factory. And it's a big family. Again, sometimes you want to kill them, but in the end, we're all part of the same boat. Yes.
Have you always been groomed to work in the business, or is it something that you found?
I mean, I don't think it was coincidence. So I'm Jose, my father's Jose, my grandfather was Jose, my great-grandfather Jose, my great-great-grandfather Jose. Yet I have older siblings, I have older brother, and they decided to name him Daniel. So I kind of joked that I was destined to be. My brother was never really interested in it anyways. In my case, I was too interested, I guess. You know, my father could not leave cigars in the ashtray for too long before I tried to puff away. And, you know, people always ask me that, but in reality, I still to this day don't feel I at least when I'm at the factory, feels like I'm working. Because that's what I've been doing all my life. You know, it's just second nature at this point for me. Dealing with tobacco, seeing the yields, the wrapper, like all this I've been doing for my entire life. So, I mean, kind of, but in reality I chose it. My father never pushed us, never. I mean, he from a very young age, he told all of us, if you guys are gonna be shoe shiner, I just expect you to be the best shoe shiner out there. I don't care what you guys, this is the least of my issues, I could just sell it. And you guys do your own thing, but in reality I've always been attracted to the business, and obviously have my own ideas, have my own thoughts. You know, in the tobacco side, you know, we were always dealing with dark acre tobacco, which is cigar tobacco. You know, I've been trying to get into the cigarette tobacco industry to supply raw material. Also in the future, you know, in the US, the grabas are famous, you know, the cuts, the blunt wraps. In the future, I would like to, I mean, we already have the base, and it's kind of my ideas my father doesn't want to get into because he does what he has, but I see what the youth is doing, and I see, you know, cigarette tobacco, even though cigarettes are going down, some companies are closing down, and there's always that niche of the quality, people that want quality, and that's what we know. When you say tobacco and la palma, it's a synonym of quality. So I want to expand that name that my grandfather and father have made into other branches of the industry. Yeah. Yes.
As the next generation of business, are there things that you would like to change that your dad maybe wants to preserve?
I mean, yeah, but in the end, this industry, the only modernization, for example, that my father's been able to do from when he inherited the factory from my grandfather was change the manual press for a hydraulic press for making the bales. Before it was a trapiche, you know, you spin, the thing goes down. But besides that, now, you know, you have digital thermometers and digital humidity meters and things. Back then it was analog, but it's the same premise. So there's not much in reality that I can change. Obviously, there has been small things like our inventory. You know, I implemented before it was all handwritten and things. Right, you take the paper, whatever. Obviously, digitalizing that, we created a program which allows me to, from when the tobacco receives there, the fermentation, the weight loss. So I worked with a developer, and we did a program that is especially for cigar factories, and I'll be able to transform. So in the case, you know, if we have a batch issue in production cigar, I can trace it back to the bale of the tobacco that was used there. It's all QR codes. Next time you'll see. I think when you guys were there, we were starting to implement it. But yeah, everything is now QR'd, and I just have to transform. You scan it with your phone, you transform it, and went from this bale to this strip, where they stripped it. This is the yield they got. So the idea is we still haven't implemented fully, but times I'm on the road like now, because in the end, you know, I had to keep the factory going. And my father says he wants to retire, but he's always there. But I gotta try to make sure I can do as much as I can possibly. And it's obviously nowadays, 21st century, a lot of industries are going through that. And I think for the newer generation coming that's gonna work with me, I'm gonna have to have somewhat of a virtuality available, because you know, you can't be at the factory and on the road at the same time, and they're both very important. You gotta make the cigars, but you gotta sell the cigars. So that's the only things, those little things that you can implement. But in reality, as a process, operation-wise, not much I can do, or anyone for that matter. I mean,
So AI is not really going to affect this.
well, that's a whole different thing. The AI, if anything, could help us. I know one company started to play around for the wrapper color selection. So it could be implemented, but I basically do binder and filler. We're starting to do some wrapper now, but we do more of a pre-sorting, pre-selection rather than a set, because I already have my manufacturing. I can create a grade for myself and I know what it is. It's not like I'm selling tobacco and said this is 21 inches, this is this tone. Like, I pack the tobacco, I use it myself, I know what it's for. So maybe in the future, but so far it's a long way to go. I mean, again, if you think about it, what else can you implement? Again, we have digital meters now instead of analog, but process itself, it's exactly the same. So if the Chinese haven't been able to do it, I don't think anyone will be able to do it. At this point, they're making 50 million cigars a year, handmade. So they haven't figured a way to advance something. I don't know if anyone's gonna figure it.
Do you think your dad's staying around because that's what you said in your conversations, you want to kill someone or something? Do you think that's why he's sticking around, because he doesn't kill your stuff?
I think if anything, he is worse. He is worse. No, but it's just part of it. Again, it's a family, and you know, when you're so close to somebody, you're open to it, and you know, if there's something wrong, you're not gonna go your way around it. Like, this is wrong. You're not. Why are you doing this? And it's part of life, you know. And love is not always colors and beauty. You know, there's some times where you're gonna have to go through shit, and you know, whether it be your relationship or working together. It's just part of it. And again, try dealing 10 people on a day-to-day basis without getting fights. Imagine 421. You know, it's a big family, but also it gets quite chaotic. Everybody loves each other. I don't know if you've been to the Dominican Republic or many Dominicans. You know, if you give a Dominicans a good cigar, a good rum, that you could be anywhere. You know, it's not the place, it's the people. And Dominicans very aware of that. And, yeah, it's part of it. After we want to kill each other, we just go have a cigar and rum and laugh about it. Remember when I grabbed that knife or whatever? So that's just part of the industry. Yes, yeah, it does happen. It hasn't happened recently. In the 90s, as I was saying, there was a boom. I wasn't alive or even old enough to remember, but I do remember my father saying that some bigger factories were trying to offer more money to the rollers and things. So I know one story where he started saying that he was gonna pay double, some shit like that, and it wasn't true. It was just because the other factory really needed them. So obviously when they said they were gonna pay double, and my dad told him, I'm not gonna pay you guys double, but just say I'm gonna pay you double. And then they ended up paying like 2.5 times what they were winning. And yeah, they took the rollers away, and yeah, they had to get their production done. But once the boom kind of went down, they always went back, because again, it's not only how we treat the people, the openness we have with them, the fact that the same health insurance that I have, all the employees have, even though I have to pay a little bit more. And we're in the dead center of the town, so everybody can go home for lunch, for breakfast, if they gotta run an errand, you know, whatever. People always want to be in La Palma. Also, we're the best paying in Tamboril in the county. And people always want to be in La Palma. Obviously, it wasn't always like that, because when my father was starting out in the 90s, 80s, it was a smaller operation. But when you treat people well, and they're artisans, and you give them good tobacco, that's another thing. To this day, they go to other factories. Sometimes they stay there, but they always go and try to get cigars from our factory, because they're artisans, right? A good roller actually cares about what he's doing. He's not only making the cigar, he wants to make a cigar that he's proud of. That's another thing of our team. You know, when they go to the beach or into the city, whatever, and they see people smoking La Galera, they're like, yeah, I work with La Galera, I'm part of the family, I'm part of so, you know, having that, so being so open, having the quality tobacco, it really, again, average age in the tobacco department is like 9 years. So to have such a high time or average time in the company, especially with so many people, it's not easy. But there's a reason we have it. And I always say, you know, in this industry, a lot of times It's a lot of talking and the mystiqueness about the blends and the tobaccos. You can't go into that room or this and that. And I'm the opposite. I always tell people, if you want seeds, I'll give them to you. If you want to know how I ferment, I'll write it down on paper. You can videotape me. I will say everything. It's a matter of you doing it. You know, this is just hard work. A lot of time, taking time with the tobacco, with the cigars. I can give you the blends that I use. It's a matter of you getting the tobacco that I use for the blend. That's how confident I am in my team and in the project that my grandfather and father have done. You know, in that sense, I'm very cocky. I mean, yeah, go ahead. I'll write it down. You know, I will tell you the blend. I will tell you the temperatures. I will give you the seeds. I will give you the seeds, the exact same seeds that I use. But it's a matter of you doing it. It's not only the seed. You gotta do the germination right, the planting, then. You got to do the picking right. Tobacco's picked through 6 pickings. The curing, first fermentation, sorting, second fermentation, like all those things take time and effort. So I can give you the recipe. It's a matter of you making it happen. So I'm very confident in our team, and there's a reason people don't leave.
Shall we do the last round? Whilst you've got a little bit of cigar left, very quickly. So we're in some more traditional rum territory here. So this is an aged rum, so it's going to pair really nicely with the back end of the cigar if you've still got some left. This isn't 100% rum from the Seychelles, this is a blended rum. So the first rum that you tasted, which was the white rum or the clear rum, we take that and we put it into French oak barrels and port barrels for 3 years. That's one component part of what's in here. The second part is a traditional pot still and column still molasses based rum. So what you might see more traditionally around the Caribbean. That's aged in ex-bourbon barrels. And the final part is from a wonderful little rum distillery called Foursquare. If anyone's tasted Foursquare distillery from Barbados, Richard Seal makes some of the best rums in the Caribbean. He's an absolute wizard. He's a bit grumpy about it sometimes, but he is very, very good at what he does. 8 years old pot and column blend ex-bourbon barrel goes into this. So some of the rum is 3 years old, some is 4. The vast majority is 8, and that's the blending component, and it's bottled at 45.1% ABV. A little bit more rich on the palate. You lose a little bit of that herbaceousness and greenness that you found. Barrel maturation will do that. You're going to extract wood tannins, wood sugars. You're going to oxidize as the air and oxygen comes inside the barrel. And you're also going to basically taper the spirit around a little bit with those nice wood sugars that you're going to extract. So what you should be finding here is that a little bit more body, a little bit more weight, a bit more spice pairs really nicely with the end of the cigar. So I hope you've enjoyed the session, guys. If you've got any questions about the rum, then please let me know.